on guys, Stevie here with Lucky Crit, and today I wanted to talk about IVs in Pokemon Go. Now if you've never heard of IVs before, they stand for individual values, and they are essentially what make your Pokemon a little bit stronger in the game. So basically every Pokemon species has base stats that determine how fast they are, how slow, how strong, and so on. But built on top of that, each Pokemon does need a layer of individuality so that when you go out and catch Pokemon, you're not catching the exact same ones as your friend down the street. So IVs are a way of making each Pokemon of that species unique. They're essentially the genes of that particular Pokemon that you've caught. Now in Pokemon Go, the IVs have been watered down a bit because in the main series Pokemon games, you had actually 6 stats and the IVs maxed out at 31. And there were also another system in place that are called EVs or effort values, and none of that stuff is present in Pokemon Go. In Pokemon Go, we only have 3 stats to worry about: attack, defense, and stamina, and all of the IVs cap at 15. I'm going to preface this video by saying that IVs are not everything, and in fact, let's assume that you're going up against a Pokemon with average middle-of-the-road IVs, let's say 50%, but you have a 100% IV perfect Pokemon that you're fighting with. In that kind of a matchup, with the way that the game currently is right now, your Pokemon is only going to be about 6 to 8% stronger than that other Pokemon. So 2 Nidokings, one's 50%, one's 100%, you've only got about a 6 to 8% advantage over that other one. So it's more for people that kind of want to min-max, maybe are a little bit more obsessed with getting the perfect specimen or finding perfect stats, because at the end of the day, in the game right now, moveset is really key. And after all that effort of evolving those 100% Pokemon, you might get a lackluster moveset anyway, which is going to affect your DPS and how strong that Pokemon is to begin with. So it's not something that you should take incredibly seriously, but if you do like the idea of having perfect Pokemon or maybe 80+% IVs, everybody's different, then definitely go for it. And in today's video, we're going to take a look at some of the ways that we can look at IVs in Pokemon Go. Now, with the recent appraisal feature that they added to the game, it gives you a great way of quickly knowing the baseline of your Pokemon's IVs, and it also gives you some helpful tools that'll help you narrow down the range from other calculators online. So let's boot up the game and take a look. So right here in front of me, I have a whole bunch of Pokemon that I caught recently, but I have not checked their IVs yet. We'll start off with the basic appraisal system, and then we'll go a little bit more in depth so that you can narrow down your Pokemon's exact IVs in some cases. So let's look at this Wartortle here. I just caught this earlier today. And if we click the bottom right, we can click Appraise. Now, depending on what team you actually picked in the game, your phrases that you'll get are a little bit different, but you kind of get the general gist of what they mean when they say it. I'll include a chart in the description of this video down below, so you can actually take a look at what exactly each phrase means for you. Now, I'm Team Mystic, so I have Blanche here who's going to tell me, overall, my Wartortle is not likely to make much headway in battle. So definitely not the best. That means that it is anywhere from 0% IVs to about 50%. So could be 0, could be 10, could be 20, you never know. Now, after that part, it's going to tell you what the best stat is that your Pokemon has, in which case she is saying that the best attribute is HP, and she's certainly impressed by its stats. So what that just did is it gave me the highest stat that it has and what number that is, or a slight little range. So for the sayings, for Team Mystic, if it's a perfect value of 15, it's going to say its stats exceed my calculations, it's incredible, in which case certainly impressed means 13 or 14. Its stats are noticeably trending to the positive is anywhere between 8 and 12, and its stats are not out of the norm, in my opinion, means it's anywhere from 0 to 7, so not great. In this case, we know that its stamina or its HP IV is 13 or 14. So we're going to head over to PokeAssistant.com and check out their IV calculator here, and I'm going to enter in the information of this Pokemon. So we have Wartortle with a CP of 902, HP 83, and it takes 3,500 dust to power up. I have not powered it up yet because I just caught this today, and we're just going to go right ahead and click calculate here, and we get its IVs here. There's only 2 potential combinations for its IVs. Sometimes you'll have a lot more depending on the level of the Pokemon and other factors. In this case, we have 2 options. Basically, 1 attack, 1 defense, and 12 stamina, 31.1% perfection, or 0 attack, 2 defense, 13 stamina, 33.3% perfection. And if you remember the clue earlier, we know that its stamina or its HP IV is actually 13 or 14, so we can narrow down this list here that we're given, and we can cross out this combination here because we know that the stamina is at least 13. So in this case, this Wartortle is exactly 33.3% perfect. These are the exact IVs. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit harder. Sometimes it might even be easier. You might not even have to do any other calculations or narrow anything down. It just all depends on the level of the Pokemon. And the sort of lower the level the Pokemon is, the lower the CP, it's going to be a little bit more of a range with more possible combinations. So this guy's not very good. I'll probably end up transferring him out for some more candy, but let's definitely check on some of these other ones here. So I did mark this seal earlier because I know that, I believe it was a wonder, which is the phrase that Blanche will say for Team Mystic when it's over 80% perfect, but I didn't actually figure out its exact IV combination, so let's do that right now. So it is a wonder. Best attribute is HP. Certainly impressed by its stats. It'll also tell you the Pokemon's size. Originally, some people had speculated that size might determine whether or not you attack a little bit faster or a little bit slower, but that's actually been disproven, and it doesn't really matter at all. It's more for, I guess, collection purposes or interesting information about your Pokemon. So with that information, we just figured out that its HP or stamina IV is 13 or 14, kind of like this Wartortle that we just did here. So let's go and type in the seal's information. So seal CP 667, 90 HP, and 3000 Stardust. So you'll see this one has much more of a range here, but we can already knock out 3 combinations here because we know that its stamina is not 15. So all of these guys down here are out, and the potential combinations are 75.6, 82.2, and 86.7% perfect. One of these we can also just knock out right now because we know that Blanche just told us that it's a wonder, which means that it is 80 to 100% perfect. So this 75.6 also out. Now we're looking at 2 potential combinations here, and actually this is a good example because in this one we can figure out its exact IVs. Sometimes you'll have some trouble, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but in this particular case, it cannot be 86.7% perfect because if it was, its defense and its stamina would have to be the same, and it would have to be 14. In which case, we would get a different message from Blanche that says its HP is its best stat, certainly impressed, and its defense as well. So they would also mention what other stats are the exact same if there are 2 highest stats the Pokemon has. So we know that it doesn't have 14 as a defense IV, in which case we know that this seal is 82.2% perfect with an attack IV of 12, a defense IV of 11, and a stamina IV of 14, which is pretty good. Let's go on to the next one. Let's check out this Kadabra here. So this is a pretty weak Kadabra. I caught this in the wild a couple of days ago, I think, and it's not that great, but we're going to take a look at this and see if we can narrow it down as well. So the Kadabra is above average, in which case it implies that it's about 51 to about 66% perfect. Not great, but pretty middle of the road, pretty average, I would say. Its best attribute is attack. Its stats are noticeably trending to the positive, which means that its attack IV is anywhere from 8 to 12. And that is the best stat that it has. So let's go back to this calculator here. Let's go Kadabra. CP of 404. HP 41. And Dust 1600. Now this might be a little bit trickier of a Pokemon to do because its CP is lower and its level is lower as far as I'm aware, which means that there's probably going to be a lot more combinations here and we might not be able to pinpoint it down to one exact combination. Sometimes you'll still have a few combinations left, so a little bit of a range, but generally using this method and these 2 ways of viewing IVs will help you lower it down to a pretty solid range that you'll know, instead of like 60 to 80%. So it should be a bit better than that. So let's calculate here, and we have a whole bunch of options here, and let's start narrowing this down. So we know that its attack IV is noticeably trending to the positive. So it can't be this guy here, because this is a 14 attack, and noticeably trending to the positive means 8 to 12. So these guys are fine. This one is not fine. This is out, and this one's out as well. Now, this one's also out. Defense can't be 13. So our options are this 53.3% here. And we've got this 55.6% here, and this guy here at 53.3%, alongside this 1274, 51.1%. Now, at this point, we're unable to narrow it down any further, just because we don't have any more information about the stats. There's a lot of possible combinations that it could make up to get this range of IVs. But if you were really curious about what the exact IVs of your Pokemon were, you can power it up using your Stardust And as time goes on, especially once you reach a new level of Stardust, for example, going from 1600 to 1800 or 1600 to 2000, it should help you to narrow down the options a little bit better. Something that you'll also notice is if we type in a CP10 Pokemon, there's going to be way too many results to find out just because it's basically the base level. There's too many combinations of what it could potentially be. It has to be powered up a bit more so that you can actually figure out what it is. What I'm going to show you now is an even easier way to do all of this without having to open up a calculator online every time and type in all of your Pokemon's information. And this is using an app called GOIV. Now, currently with the way that the terms of service are for the game, Niantic does not want anybody using third-party apps to get data from the game, to use the API in any way, because it does create problems with their servers. So as far as I'm aware, this app does not actually break the terms of service for Pokemon Go because it's simply a screen overlay that's just looking for information on your screen and kind of quickly helps you figure out the IVs. Now, in this particular app called GOIV, if we go and select a Pokemon, let's do the Kadabra just as another quick example here. You'll see a new button has popped up in the bottom left corner that says IV. We can click on that, and it kind of looks at my screen and kind of determines what Pokemon it is, what CP, the HP, and then it looks at the CP bar and determines where that is as well. And sometimes that'll be off and you'll have to manually adjust it like I am right now, but in this case it got it pretty good. If you do nickname your Pokemon, it will get confused about what Pokemon species that you're looking at, and you'll have to manually click on this and pick from that drop-down list. And also I noticed with Nidorans it does get confused. It always assumes that everything is basically a female Nidoran, so if you're doing IV checks on male Nidorans, you're going to have to go into the list, make sure it's a male Nidoran, or it's going to give you like errors when you go to search up the stats. And we can click check IV here, and this gives us the range. So the range that it's giving us is minimum of 49%, maximum of 56%, and that's in line with what we saw over here before. So basically this just stops you from having to do the extra step of going online to a calculator, typing in all that information, figuring out the IVs with that, and with this, we can just kind of use Appraise, and then look at the GOIV calculations and sort of figure out which one it is. So let's do another Pokemon as an example here. Let's do this Haunter. Caught this guy in the wild as well. So we'll appraise him first. Certainly caught my attention for Team Mystic means it's anywhere from 67 to 79%. Best attribute is defense. Certainly impressed by its stats. So the best stat that this Pokemon has is defense, and it's either 13 or 14. Let's click the IV button, make sure everything is lined up properly, including HP. Looks good. There are only two options for this Pokemon. And we know it's not the first one because attack is listed as 14 as the first potential combination here. And we know that defense is the highest stat at 13 or 14, in which case it's 13, and this is a 76% Haunter. I'll do one more example and then we'll call it a day on IVs here, but someone kicked my Snorlax out of the gym. Let's figure out my Snorlax here because I've never actually taken a look at it. I found this guy on the street the other night. There's also a cool theory going around about where Pokemon spawn based on keywords and stuff. Somebody was saying any road that has like cherry or some kind of a berry name, food, fruit, trees, something like that, Snorlax has a higher % chance of spawning on, I believe. In which case, I caught this on Cherry Road, which is pretty interesting now that I look back and think about that. Snorlax has certainly caught my attention, so 67 to 79% IVs. Best attribute is HP, matched equally by its attack. Stats exceed my calculations, it's incredible. So HP and attack are maxed at 15. All we need to figure out is which of these combinations we're looking at. So make sure this is all right, looks good. And in which case, this Pokemon doesn't even have another range because we know right off the bat, it's a 76%, 15 attack, 4 defense, 15 stamina. It's not a very defensive Snorlax here, but that's a very easy one. Because it's such a high CP, it doesn't have many options when it comes to the combination of IVs that it could possibly have. Let's do one final one here. Let's do this Vulpix I hatched the other day. Now, unfortunately, I don't think it was a wonder, so let's look at this. Certainly caught my attention, once again. Best attribute is attack. Stats are noticeably trending to the positive, so 8 to 12 attack, and that is the best that it's got. Click the IV button, make sure everything lines up properly. Also, you want to make sure that your trainer level is correct in the actual GOIV page when you click to turn on the screen capture. If you level up, you will get some wonky calculations after that, so you want to make sure that you are updating that whenever you level up so you're not getting inaccurate calculations. So we know that we're looking at 8 to 12 attack, and that's the best it's got. So right off the bat, I can cross out the first option, cross out the second option, the third option, the fourth option, and the fifth option, leaving only one option remaining, which is attack 12, defense 11, stamina 11, 76% perfect. If you want to see an example of a perfect IV Pokemon, I have two. I have a Doduo that I did end up evolving into a Dodrio. Unfortunately, didn't have the best moveset, but it's still a cool little treasure to have. And I did catch, alongside my cousin and my younger brother, a 100% perfect Execute, which, if it evolves into an Executor with the perfect moveset, it is a 100% perfect Pokemon. Cannot get a better one. But that makes me super nervous because obviously there are other movesets that I could potentially get, and they're not going to be the best. So I'm definitely crossing my fingers on that one. My cousin actually did end up evolving his, and he got the perfect moveset, so his Executor is mint. So the one that I'm talking about right here is this 565 CP one. Not the highest CP, but it's 100%. I'm totally going to evolve this one whenever I get the chance, and I'm getting pretty close. Not quite there just yet. So this is Godsecute, and we're going to praise him really quickly. It's a wonder, obviously. Best attribute is HP, matched equally by its attack, matched equally by its defense. Its stats exceed my calculations. It's incredible. So 15 all across the board. Perfect Execute. Now, the chance to find a perfect Pokemon in the wild is very, very small. And in fact, it's much easier to get perfect Pokemon from eggs. Egg hatching is definitely the best way to go about getting good IV Pokemon. In fact, I don't think I've ever hatched anything with less than 70% IVs. So hatching Pokemon guarantees a pretty darn good Pokemon. In some cases, you will get 90% or higher. Unfortunately, recently I hatched both a male and female Nidoran that I was super excited about. The male Nidoran had 93% IVs, and the female Nidoran had 91% IVs. I was so stoked. In my book, that's like as good as I'm gonna get. Not gonna worry about getting any better than that. I evolved both of them, and unfortunately they both had lackluster movesets. That is kind of super unfortunate. Alongside that Poliwrath I made in the last episode at Mystic Seaport, which had the wrong moveset too, which kind of sucks, not gonna lie. But I'm just gonna continue playing, continue getting more Pokemon. Thankfully, Nidorans are pretty common in our area, so hopefully I'll either hatch more or find another one in the wild with 90% plus, and I'll end up getting that Poison Jab Earthquake, or maybe I'd even settle for like Poison Jab Stone Edge. But the moveset that I got on the Nido Queen was Bite Stone Edge, unfortunately. So the quick attack, that kind of matters more in most cases. Lower DPS, not good. So hopefully Niantic won't change their mind about whether or not apps like this break terms of service. They're just sort of helping us a little bit more quickly figure out the IVs. It's not actually interacting with the game in any facet. So when it comes down to it, moveset really is the most important factor in Pokemon Go for competitive Pokemon. However, if you want that distinctive edge over other Pokemon of a specific species, or you just want to be the very best that there ever was, you definitely want to look into IVs and make sure that you're using Pokemon with good IVs. Now, it does also extend the sort of fun that the game has, because for someone like me, there's a lot of evolutions that I've already done, a lot of evolved Pokemon I already have and appreciate, but when it comes down to it, I want to keep making better Pokemon, so I'm going to continue playing and continue catching, continue getting more candy, and evolving Pokemon as well, so I can have a really great team, which also extends the longevity of the game for me. So in my book, that's fun. So if you didn't know much about IVs, I hope you learned something from this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comment section down below the best IV Pokemon that you have in your party, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Alright, so since we're here in Mystic Seaport, what we're going to do is actually do a Poliwhirl to Poliwrath evolution that I've been waiting for a little bit. Now, the CP isn't the highest, it's only 527, however, it's 91% perfect, so definitely the one that I'm going to want to make into a Poliwrath, and then at that point, I can just power him up if he has the right moveset. Always the most important thing in my mind. So, let's go. Let's see what we got here.
America, baby!